Welcome to the third episode of the Boiled Up Podcast, now officially back or officially on YouTube. This will be the first one to be uploaded on there. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about our thoughts on the new NFL minority rule, if we think the Bulls would have won more title if Michael Jordan didn't retire both those times or at the end, and how dominant MJ would be in today's era. We're also going to talk about just the doc in general, and also our thoughts on whether Scottie Pippen should or should not be ranked 21st in the overall NBA player rankings from ESPN. But we're going to start off with this NFL minority rule, and this was a new thing that we heard about last week, but it was kind of finalized today, and this was the excerpt from the NFL. So this is what the NFL minority rule, Rooney Rule, is going to be. If a team hires a minority head coach, that team in the draft preceding the coach's second season would move up 6 spots from where it is slotted to pick up in the third round. The team would jump 10 spots under the same scenario for hiring a person of color as its primary football executive, a position more commonly known as general manager. If a team were to fill both positions with diverse candidates in the same year, that club could jump up 16 spots, 6 for the coach, 10 for the GM, and potentially move from the top of the third round into the middle of the second round. Another incentive is a team's fourth-round pick would climb 5 spots in the draft, preceding the coach's or GM's third year if he is still with the team. This is pretty significant because, as we know, Steve Wilkes and Vance Joseph are 2 of only 4 African-American head coaches hired since 2017 who were fired after 1 and 2 seasons, respectively. And that's the statement that the NFL put out today. And Justin, I know you were shaking your head there. I want to hear your thoughts first on this.
I just think it's crazy. I mean, how can you reward them for hiring a Black African-American coach? Like, I just don't get it. Like, how can you reward somebody for that? Like, everyone's preaching for equality, but that's not equality. If you're incentivizing the teams, that is not equality. They should not be getting. I think it is a shame that it's dominated by white males, the coaching and the front offices. But I mean, you should not incentivize people to go out and hire. Like, for example, I like Brian Flores a lot. I'm happy he's with the Dolphins. I think he's going to be a really good coach. I like Mike Tomlin too. I like them. I think they're going to be really good. I think there should be more of them, but the NFL can't incentivize these teams to go out there and hire guys like that. This whole draft pick thing's dumb. If you want to do anything, enhance the Rooney Rule. That way the teams get punished more if they break it, or make it harder for teams to not follow it. Like, things like that. I don't think you should be giving teams better draft picks. I think that's so stupid.
I think there's a problem with this that I have, and I know you were kind of bringing up. Yeah, the coaches and the GMs were low with African-American people in those positions, but there's a ton of other positions in every football organization that everybody's had an equal chance of. There's diversity on every team in the NFL. So I think like this notion that there's no diversity in the NFL is kind of ridiculous. But, you know, if you want to get more coaches and GMs, you just can change the old Rooney Rule, which was that you had to interview at least like 1 black coach or something like that in the offseason. If you're looking for a new coach, maybe have it be 2 or 3 black coaches rather than just interviewing 1. Maybe you change that rule, and if you don't do it, then you get punished. Then teams will really have to look into these other African-American coaches to change the organization that they're having. But the fact that we're discussing jumping up in draft picks is just now we're going to be using all these coaches just to get higher draft picks, not because of their football skills, not because of their knowledge, which is stupid. I mean, I think this is exactly like I think Rooney would be disgusted with this. I cannot believe I mean, God rest his soul because he's no longer with us, but he's got to be rolling in his grave looking at this. This is not how you fix diversity. This is how you just cause teams to use African-American coaches just to move up in the draft, because there's a huge difference between a mid-third round pick and a late second-round pick, as we all know. The first two rounds of the NFL draft are usually all starters, pretty much all the time almost. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. You know, they're really good players. They're players that you think are going to be starters and players for that team for multiple years. So being able to jump up 16 spots, I don't get it. And then every team's going to be doing this. So everybody's just going to be shifting in the same place. So it's probably going to get nothing done anyways. So,
it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, would you incentivize teams to draft white males over black males because they are more dominant in the league right now? You wouldn't do
Yeah.
that. Like, it's the same
No.
situation. Obviously, there's more African American males in football right now, but nobody's complaining about that, saying, like, you
Yeah.
wouldn't incentivize that. So why are you incentivizing it in the front office? They shouldn't be rewarding them for doing it. They should
No.
just make it so that they are doing it on their own. They shouldn't have to reward them. I think that's so stupid.
Like Rooney's whole idea was that if you don't do this, we penalize you either with salary cap or with draft picks.
Draft
We
picks.
don't we don't give you something for doing this because it's not like this is what they should be doing. You should be interviewing more black coaches. We shouldn't just be like, oh, we hired a black coach, now we just want a second round pick, and then we're going to fire him after 1 year, just to get that pick. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be easily taken advantage of. I can't believe it passed. When I first heard it last week, I was like, there's no way this is passing, and we're hearing today it's going to pass. So
Crazy.
it's a
Stupid,
bad
in my opinion.
it's just disastrous. I bet you this could be one of those things like the offensive I think the pass interference penalty that we saw this year, where it maybe lasts 1 year and then we see it in the draft and they're just like, wow, this really doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, teams could be like, oh yeah, let's hire an African American male to be our coach. They hire him, and then what happens after 2 years? There's no more punishment for firing him, so they hire
No
him
more
for 2 years,
punishment.
punish him, and they fire him, and then they get the draft picks anyway, and then they
Yeah,
can just fire him after 2 years. So there's no real stability with the job either. And how are you forcing if he does coach poorly? Why are you forcing them to keep him for 2 years? He could be a terrible coach,
exactly.
but you're forcing them to keep him for 2 years. That doesn't make
Just to
sense
get a better
either.
draft pick. It's just
Yeah,
stupid. Like if I just think it was sort of when I don't know what caused them to think about this out of nowhere. Somebody thought of this. Somebody idiotic thought of this, and just I don't know who was like, "That's a good idea." I can't believe that so many people are in the NFL and they all think this is a good idea and that it should get passed, including Roger Goodell. I mean, Roger Goodell would have the final say if he didn't like it. So it's bad, but
yeah. Well, I don't think he's that great of a. I'm not a big Roger Goodell fan. I think he's
no, I
very
don't think
poor.
anybody is.
He's not a very good commissioner. So I can see totally why he would make something like this up. I mean,
He's
it's
probably the
right. It's
worst
right to get
commissioner in
this.
sports.
Exactly, he is. It's
Yeah,
right for them to emphasize that there should be more African Americans in the coaching department and front office, but the way they're going about this is totally wrong.
yeah, it's bad. But we're gonna move on. We're going to move on from this. I know it's hard to. We want to keep talking about it, but we got to move on. Yesterday, we finished, all of the world finished the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance.
Mhm.
And the last two episodes were pretty much all about that 98 season, except for the little bit of the 97 season with the flu game. So our overall thoughts on this, obviously, I'm a big LeBron guy. I think he's the greatest player of all time. But if I'm being honest, this documentary that's a debate for another time. We got to keep it based on the Bulls today because I got to pay a little bit of respect. What they did with this documentary was very, very good. I thought it was really entertaining, and it kind of brought to light a lot of things that I didn't know because I wasn't alive back in this time. And I think it brought a lot of new things to life that we didn't know, and some pretty shocking things like the fact at the end, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, there was some pretty shocking stuff dropped yesterday. It wasn't just the repeat of history. There was some new stuff that was dropped, which was shocking. So I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed the documentary, and I'm sure you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I really enjoyed every second of it. I mean, it was entertaining, informational. I just learned so many little details about MJ and that Bulls team that I had no idea even existed or even happened before. And like, I've talked to people like my dad or somebody else who was alive during that time, and they had no idea any of this stuff happened. Like, there was just so many new details that came out, along with other
Yeah,
ones that I found shocking or interesting as well. But there was, if I had to critique one thing, I would say at times it could have been hard to pay attention to it because they jumped. It wasn't so much in the last episodes, but in the beginning and to the middle there, they were jumping around from like
yeah, from
97
like
all the way back to
'98 to
88.
'80.
Like,
Yeah.
they jumped around a little too much for me there and a little bit there through the middle. But
Hmm.
overall, I really enjoyed it. I think that would be my only critique if I had one. But other than that, I'd give
Yeah.
it like a 10 out of 10. It was
Yeah,
very good.
it was great. But we talked about that. Now we got to get into debating what this show is all about. So the first topic that we're going to talk about today: would the Bulls have won more titles if Michael Jordan didn't end up quitting or retiring? At the end of
Quit, he
his last
retired.
season. because once he found out that Phil was gone, he decided to walk away. I'm going to start off here. I think that there is no way in hell that this Bulls team could have won another title in that next season. And I think there's a lot of reasons. As stated in this documentary, Jerry Reinsdorf, he was the Bulls, he was the owner of the Bulls, worked with general manager Jerry Krause. He said that it would have taken almost a miracle to bring all these players back, like Scottie Pippen, who already we saw in the documentary complained a ton about the money he was receiving. They would have had to pay him max dollars back then. Steve Kerr was their startup light-up shooter. He was attracting a lot of teams as well and higher money. These guys, and Rodman as well, who was kind of towards the end of his career and just wanted to probably make the last bit of money that he could make. Why would all these guys take pay cuts just for one more season when they could take bigger, longer deals and play out their career with more money just to play one more year?
To win.
I don't think they would have won.
They would have to win. If MJ stayed, they would have came back 100%, no doubt.
We saw throughout that whole night. Look, I'll give you this: the '90s teams and the first start of that second three-peat, they were all together. But by the end of that '98 season, they were looking really dysfunctional. I mean, they got players like Dennis Rodman rolling into wrestling for no reason. There was no real structure to that team. They had problems up top. One guy wants to rebuild. The other guy wants to go for one more year. You can't have a dysfunctional organization and win a championship. As good as Michael Jordan was, I think it would have just been a dent in his legacy if they had went to that playoffs the next season. I think they would have lost to either the Lakers, who were having Shaq and Kobe at that point and heading into their peak, or the main team that I thought could have easily beat them was the San Antonio Spurs. They had Tim Duncan and Duncan Robinson, who were the best power forward and center combination we've ever seen. They went 15-2 in that playoffs in '99, and they won the chip easily. And remember, this was the lockout season. So those old guys that the Bulls had would have had less time to get ready for the playoffs. They would have been jumped into a 50-game season and then expected to win a championship. I think it would have just been a dent in MJ's legacy. I think the only time he could have won more titles was when he retired to play baseball for some reason, which is still, to me, is very fishy and makes no sense why he would go away and play baseball for a year and a half when he could have won 2 more championships for his dad doing what he does best. I think his dad would have said, "What the hell are you doing?"
No. Okay. So first off, he would have won in '93, and if he didn't retire, he would have won in '94, and he would have won in '99 as well. He would have won. He would have won in all of them because, first off, they won 55 games without him, and if you add MJ's prime MJ to that team, they easily would have done it. They lost to the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, who went on to win the Eastern Conference. If they had Jordan, they would have easily done better than that. They would have easily made the finals, and they would have taken down the Rockets. I just don't see anything about it. And
I agree. I think that the only time he could have won, again, would have been those middle seasons when he quit to play baseball. He quit on the team to play baseball.
There's no doubt. He didn't quit. He retired, and there is no doubt he wins those two. I mean, they would have dominated that Rockets team easily. And then because the following year, they almost went back again to the finals with only half a season of MJ, and MJ was still out of shape from not playing basketball that long. If he was in shape, they would have won that game, no doubt. They would have won that series, moved on. They would have been in the finals, and they would have won. So there's no doubt in my mind that they would have won.
I see that, but
if they kept that, I'm not saying this is all hypothetical here. So I'm assuming you keep that team intact. If you keep that team intact, they would have easily knocked off the Spurs in '99, despite having trouble with the Twin Towers. I mean, I don't see them not beating them. I mean, they were already facing Karl Malone, who's arguably up there with Jordan and Robinson on how good they are on that level. So they were able to contain him somewhat. You got good defenders down low for the Bulls. They would have had trouble. Everyone had trouble with them, but they would have had nobody to guard MJ. MJ would have went off that series once again. And
what? Yeah, finish.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So all I'm gonna say is, and this is another knack that I have for MJ. All throughout this documentary, how this guy is such a killer competitor. All he wants to do is win at all costs. Why the hell is he just relying on Phil Jackson as his head coach when he could have just gone to the Bulls and say, "I'll stay for another year if you just get me any other coach"? It could have been a Doug Collins. It could have been anybody. And I think that if you're that great of a player, you could win without Phil Jackson, who I think is actually a little bit of an overrated coach.
He wasn't. He was trying to make a statement to the front office. That was the real reason.
If Michael Jordan
he was tired of the front office.
Killer guy, you want to win at all costs. And he was like, "Oh, I wish we had gone for 7." But if you're going to be that killer guy, you got to have no regrets. And it seems like Michael Jordan has a couple of regrets, which I think is a knack. Why wouldn't he just play that last season without Phil Jackson? Phil Jackson was not the reason that they were winning championships. He was a part of
No,
it, but he
but he
wasn't
was
the main
making a
reason.
stand to the front office because the front office was trying to overshine Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan didn't like that. Michael Jordan wanted to be the star. He didn't want to be some second guy
He
to their
was
front.
the star. Don't give me that. He was the star. Nobody knew who Jerry Krause was until this even began.
Yes, but
Like
Jerry
nobody.
Krause was trying to implement himself as the star. He was trying to put himself out there as the star. So that's exactly the reason why he didn't want to be there anymore. He was done with him. That's the reason he left. He was done with Jerry Krause in that front office. He didn't like them anymore. He didn't want to play for him anymore. And if they were getting rid of Phil Jackson, he was trying to make a stand for his friend and coach at the time.
I just can't believe that the so-called GOAT retired right towards his last final years of his prime, because he was still the MVP of the league that year. You cannot sit up there and tell me that he couldn't have won at least another MVP in those last 3 seasons, because he would have. But
No,
why he quit?
that's what makes him so special. He could have done more, but he opted not to. If LeBron can go out, LeBron is not the GOAT yet. He has not proven it. If LeBron can go out and win about 3 more rings in the next 5 years while playing successfully at a high level for the next 5 years, then LeBron can be considered the GOAT because he has just as many rings and he had a longer career and more successful career. But right now,
Exactly.
Jordan has more rings and he was more successful in the time he played. So you got to give it to Jordan at the time being. You can't give it to LeBron yet. I do agree, though, LeBron has the chance to become better, but he has not surpassed Jordan yet. Not at all.
Well, I think it's tough to say that. I think that LeBron wouldn't have. I think if LeBron was at LeBron is at the same age that Jordan was, 35 when Jordan left the game. LeBron is not leaving the game anytime soon. I think LeBron's got 4 or 5 years left in the NBA, maybe 3 to 4. Maybe he'll play to 38 like Kobe did. But I think he's about to be on his way out.
It's tough to tell. You can't say yet. You never know what injuries are going to happen.
But Michael Jordan should not have just sat on his ass for 4 years and then gone to the Wizards. He could have easily done some pretty major damage in those next 3 years. But he decided
but
not
that's
to.
what makes it what he did so incredible, because he did all this in less time than what LeBron has done.
Finals competition has something to do with that. That's all I'll say.
Finals competition. LeBron was playing in that weak East.
The first finals, LeBron didn't have a real team to play with.
He had a good. He didn't have a good team, but that was the only time he had a team comparable to any MJ team. These other teams, LeBron's team was so much better. MJ didn't play with a Chris Bosh and a Dwayne Wade in their primes. He didn't play with a Kyrie Irving and a Kevin Love. He played with Scottie Pippen. That was it.
There's only really 2 NBA finals where I think you can legitimately blame LeBron. And the first one is the Dallas Maverick one, and the second one is against the Spurs. The Spurs in the second Heat run, in the last Heat run, I think they should have won that series. But those Cavs losses to the Warriors, they were undermanned, and they were just the Warriors stacked the deck so hard in those last 2. It was unwinnable for LeBron. No one could have won.
It was winnable if he really wanted it.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan would not have beaten those Warriors with KD. That's all I'm going to say. All right, but we got to move on. So the next topic we're going to talk about is, again, about Michael Jordan, this guy, the GOAT. So how dominant do we think Michael Jordan would be in today's era? Justin, you can start.
MJ would dominate today's game. Today's game is so soft compared to what it was back then. MJ would just dominate. He'd find a way to take over. He was always trying to find a way around the rules. He's kind of like a James Harden type player where he bends the rules, not breaks them. He's always trying to innovate new things. He'd easily be averaging 45 points per game right now. I mean, he averaged 35 points per game back then, and there was hand checking. There's no hand checking anymore, so there's no real defense. The defense is softer. He'd just dominate, and the three-point line would be more in effect. It would be more of a typical use in a game, so I think MJ would more adapt to that, so he'd easily be shooting more threes and making more of them. So that'd be more points right there. He'd have to.
How many points do you think he'd average? 45 fucking points.
He'd average 45.
There's no way
A night.
Look, I'm with you on this. Michael Jordan would not be a scrub in today's era. I think he would probably put up around 30 to 35 points per game. But nowhere near
James
45.
James Harden can do 35, and MJ is certainly a better player than James Harden.
He's a better player, but
you can't say 40. You can't say. You have to say at least 40.
No,
that's you'd ridiculous. Average at least 40.
First of all, I don't think his teams would even have the opportunity to give him 40, because as we're seeing in most of the leagues today, the best players guys like LeBron and Anthony Davis are sitting deep into the fourth because they're up so much. I mean, if Michael Jordan is so great as you're saying, why does he need to put up 50 a night if his team's up by 20 to 30 points in the fourth quarter?
Because
So that's
when
a
did MJ
factor.
ever have a player with him that was a top 5 player in the league like LeBron has right now? Never.
He didn't. He
Never.
made Scottie Pippen who he was. But I think
Anthony Davis alone without LeBron was considered a top 5 player in the league. Now he has LeBron on his team, and LeBron makes his teammates better. He's easily a top 5 player right now. That's better than anybody MJ played with on his team by a long shot. It's not even close.
I'm with you on that. The only thing that I think that you had to bring up.
So yes, why you say the Warriors dynasty was tougher than what MJ played against, but MJ's teams, his teammates, were not nearly as good as LeBron's teammates. LeBron had much better teammates.
I can't disagree with that. I just think that today, in those Warriors finals, I mean, LeBron lost 3 of his 6 to those Warriors. If he had faced just normal competition with those Cavs teams,
it's still 3 more than LeBron. That's still 3 more losses than MJ had.
It's 3 more. I mean, that's tough, but. All right, so I'm with you. I think Michael Jordan would do very well in this game. Obviously, he's Mount Rushmore in basketball. It's not like he would have just fell. The only thing that I think would hold him back from those 40 to 50 points that you're claiming, which I think is a little ridiculous, is he never was a three-point shooter. You can't just develop a three-point shot like that in like one season. If you threw him in the NBA,
you know how many NBA players have done that so far? Tons of NBA players do it right now.
He was a 32% three-point shooter his whole career. Do you really think he would have went all the way up to like 42?
If he came up in this game right now, he would have jumped up easily.
I completely disagree. First of all, and what would he do with that patented mid-range jumper? Nobody shoots it anymore. The only players in the NBA who shoot that jumper are DeMar DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard shoots it.
Yeah, and how good is Kawhi? Kawhi's arguably the best player in the game right now.
But he's not putting up 45 points a game. He's putting up like 27.
He's not, because he's not as good of a scorer as MJ was. He does not get to the rack like MJ does, so people were able to guard him out there. MJ's ability to drive to the basket was what made him shoot the mid-range jumper. His ability to get to the rim, people had to sag off of him. He'd do a little crossover step back and bang, his mid-range jumper was right there because they had to sag off him. No different than what James Harden and Steph Curry do right now. James Harden shoots a ton of mid-range jumpers as well. His mid-range jumper is one of the best
about 10 threes a game.
Yeah, he does. And I think MJ would develop the same thing because when players start to come out further, when he'd start to drive, he'd cross up and he'd be there at the 3 because if he stands out further, the defense will come out on him like that and it will free up more space in there. It's a different game today. So if he's playing in today's standards, he would have had to develop the 3 because that's what's happening in today's game. Look at LeBron. LeBron was never a 3-point shooter. Now he is. Now he can shoot
still
3.
Sucks. He shoots like 35%.
He still shoots the 3s. It's not like he doesn't. You can't say he doesn't. So would MJ do that? MJ would develop the 3 in today's game, no doubt.
MJ's whole game was that mid-range jumper. I don't think he would give – I think Michael Jordan would rather take 20 mid-range jumpers in any era than cut that down to like 15 and shoot 5 to 6 threes a game. I don't think there's any way he would have done that. He loved that mid-range jumper. He shot like 60% from that mid-range jumper in his NBA career. He's ridiculous from that range. So I just think yes, he would have dominated teams, but I think he would have dominated them with 2s and with free throws and with drives and a little bit less than a 3, somewhere around 30 to 35 points per game, which is what he did as an NBA player in the 80s. Maybe a little bit.
He already did that, and the league would be easier today. So there's no way he doesn't at least do better. He would easily do better. No doubt he would do better.
It's tough to say. 40 to 50? That's just a lot.
I didn't say 50. I said 40 to 45.
45, that's a lot. He was never even close to that. In his best season, he averaged 38 a game. That was his best
year. So you're telling me he couldn't have gotten 40?
That was one year he went for 38.
The league is easier right now. Yeah, you don't think he could have a season? He could have a season where he puts up between 40 to 45 points per game, no doubt in my mind.
Maybe one. He played in his career.
No, not for his career, no, but he'd be dominating in it. He'd be able to put up a season like that, which is better than anyone has ever put up in the NBA, like guard-wise.
Hypothetically, I mean, that's what all we're talking about here, but I don't see it. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is, so at ESPN, we all know they came up with these big rankings in last week, and the one guy that I wanted to talk about a little bit was Scottie Pippen. First of all, Scottie Pippen was made by Michael Jeffrey Jordan. The only reason he's even talked about these days is because of Michael Jordan. Yet ESPN puts him at 21 in the overall player rankings. I've got a bit of a hot take here. I know you're probably not going to agree with it. I don't even think Scottie Pippen is a top 50 player of all time. I don't think he's a top 50 player of all time. First of all, he was exposed when he left the Bulls in 98. He went to Phoenix, signed a max deal, and did nothing for his next couple years. Even though he was in the middle of his prime, he did nothing. And he had a good team.
How did he do in 93? How did he do in 93?
And I know everybody's talking about that 93 season. It was in the same system, and he put up 22 points and 8 boards and 3 steals a game. He was great.
Very good season.
That was his best season. His best season isn't even better than all the 50 guys and all the top 50 guys in the NBA who I would put on my list. I'm not going to list them all off now. It'd be too many names. But there is no way in hell that he should be even top 50, let alone 21st. There's many guys in today's league who I would take over him. You could have given Michael Jordan any second guy who could have put up 15 points and a couple steals a game, like a Gary Payton, the glove, who they call him in the Supersonics. You substitute Gary Payton for Scottie Pippen, they win 6 rings. It doesn't matter. You could have had anybody in there with Michael Jordan as a secondary scorer just to put up 15 a game, and they would have won 6 titles.
You're right. But he was the one that was on that team. So therefore should be ranked that high. He shouldn't be ranked at 21. I agree with you on that. But he should be between 25 and 30 in my opinion. I mean, look, he played 17 years. 12 of them were at the best quality. He was a 7-time All-Star. He was arguably
he was a third. He was on a good team.
10 times.
He was the third best player because the Bulls were top heavy. He was if you put him on a really good team.
He was that second best player on the Bulls team.
They were top heavy. I actually think Dennis Rodman was better, more valuable to the team.
No way. They still won without Dennis Rodman. No way. That's a different debate here. But think about it.
That was when Michael Jordan.
He was an All-Star MVP. He won All-Star MVP. He was a member of the '92 Dream Team. 91 playoffs. He averaged 22, 9, and 6, which was 17 games. Pretty impressive. He was the second best player on 6 championships. 6 championships. He was the second best player. Whether it was MJ or not, you can't deny he did it. He still had to do it. He had to go out there and execute that. And he was a tough player. He played through a lot of injuries, a lot of pain through there. I mean, you saw it in the documentary. He went out there as a decoy. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. It shows the type of player he was. I mean, he led the league in steals.
He also quit on his team in the playoffs
28 and
when
6,
Jordan left.
shooting 49%. His 4-year playoff peak, he averaged 21, 8, and 6 in 61 games there. So he was consistently dominant in the playoffs, consistently dominant in the regular season for those 4 years there. He was just a dominant player. And whether or not MJ helped him, MJ obviously helped him. I mean, MJ helps everyone on his team get better. But that shouldn't deny the fact that Scottie Pippen still went out there and performed great. He's got to be somewhere between 25 and 30 right now. I mean, as players like an Anthony Davis, for example, in this league, because we talked about him earlier, he will eventually be better than Scottie Pippen. I will give you that. I think Scottie Pippen will start to fall, but you can't be giving guys who haven't finished their career yet. You can't put guys who haven't finished their career yet too far ahead of him just because they haven't played yet. They haven't played enough games. Eventually, he will start to fall, and I agree with you. He'll fall out of the top 50 eventually. Because as we see new generational talents
I think he'll fall
in,
out of the top 100, to be honest with you. I think
we'll see. I mean, new generational talents coming in every day. So you just got to wait and see. It's a tough thing. He certainly shouldn't be ranked 21. I'll agree with you on that. But somewhere between 25 and 30 right now is where I would put him.
All right. The last thing I want to talk about today, and I know we didn't put this in the script, Justin, but we talked about it a little bit yesterday in that group chat of ours. So we've been talking about the NFL playoffs a lot in that group chat and who we think could be a possible surprise either in the NFC or the AFC, like a team that you wouldn't expect to make the playoffs that could make the playoffs or maybe do some damage in the playoffs. So I know I'm kind of just throwing this in here, but I thought about it and I think it'd be a good idea to finish the show. Who's a team that you really like this year as an underdog team?
This is tough. I mean, there's some good teams. It's going to be interesting because they added a 7th team this year.
That's exactly what makes this year a little
So that's a hard one because there's a lot here. I really like Denver. I think Denver could be really good. Especially because they're in such a good division that I think they're going to lose a couple games just because they're in a good division. And like they got to play the Chiefs twice a year. Like that's no offense to the Broncos, but they're not beating the Chiefs. If they do, they beat them once. So that's already a loss, probably 2 losses right there. So I think they're going to be at best 8-9 win team.
I
So I
think 8
think
and 8, 9 and 7 can get in this year though,
so do I.
at
That's
least
why
in
I
the
said
AFC.
I think they're kind of my surprise team, at least in the AFC. If I had to go NFC, if I had to say something, I think Seattle may not make it. I could see Seattle not making it. I could see a team like it's tough. That's still tough. Because you got a team. I think the 49ers probably win that division again. And then I think I could
Yeah, I
definitely see the
agree. I think
Cardinals.
that
I could see the Cardinals beating them out there, beat out Seattle. I like the Cardinals a lot this year. So I could see the Cardinals beating out Seattle. And then the NFC, what is that? NFC North is very good. You got good teams there with Green Bay and Minnesota. Those two teams, one of them can't win the division. You got the Eagles and Dallas. One of them can't win the division. So they're
yeah.
going to be fighting for that seventh seed or sixth and seventh seed, I guess you should say. And then you still got what do you got? The NFC South there. You get Tampa Bay and you get the Saints. One of them can't win the division, so it's going to be a
Yeah.
dogfight for sure between them. It's
Yeah.
tough to say.
I think it's tough to say. I got a team in the AFC, and I know this is a dark horse team. I think the Oakland Raiders could possibly make the playoffs this year. I really liked their team last season. They had a really good rookie they drafted in the first round, Jonathan Abrams. He played a great first game, and they won on Monday Night Football against the Denver Broncos. But he got hurt. I think I forget what happened. He might have torn his shoulder or something.
I think it
And
was a
he
pec. I think it
yeah,
was
his
his
pec.
pectoral.
He was great. He played great in that game. He had like a pick and like like a bunch of key tackles and a couple and like even a sack. This guy can play all over the field and he's a safety. He's going to be coming back this season at full strength. They had the surprise last year with that Crosby kid. Um, okay, and also their defense got even better into the draft, and they got this guy Jerry Judy, or sorry, they got Henry Ruggs. My bad.
They had Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, they got Henry Ruggs, who many people I don't know, many people see him as maybe the best receiver in the draft, but they got a guy. They got a good receiver out of the draft. That's what we know they're going to get. I think you plug him into that offense, and where you already got Tyra Williams, you already got a Darren Waller, you already got Josh Jacobs, who could have won NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year offensive
Him
Rookie
or
of the Year
Miles
last
Sanders
year.
should have.
Him or Miles Sanders should have won that. They were dominant in the backfield. So I like the Raiders a lot. I think Derek Carr, he's not a great quarterback, but he's kind of reminding me of
He's a game manager.
He's like a Ryan Tannehill type guy, and look at where the Titans went last year. So I think with good
Yes, but the
luck,
Titans had a better team all around.
they do. But the Raiders have a pretty easy schedule this year. But we'll see how they move to Las Vegas. Maybe these players are going to be going nuts in Vegas, but I like them this year. And in the NFC, I think a team that if in the NFC, if I had to pick one team that I think could surprise a lot of people, and I know I took Kyler Murray as my dark horse MVP, so I'm going to take the Cardinals. I think that the Cardinals could be really good this year. They got a really good offense. Their defense definitely needs some work. They didn't do a lot in the draft to shore up that defense, and that's probably why. Like if they had a good defense with that offense, many teams would be saying they might win that division or contend in that division at least. But if they can maybe they can pull off something and develop some guys in these drafts and get that defense shored up. They could, I think, just with that offense alone, they have an 8 to 9 win team. If their defense just steps up a little bit, they could be a 10 to an 11 win team. I don't think they'll win that division over the Seahawks or the 49ers, but they could easily win. They could easily get that 6 or 5 spot, in the playoffs and make some noise. So they'd be the team I'd pick in the NFC. Although the NFC is going to be really a dogfight this year. I think in the AFC, there's a lot of teams who can end up in that 6-7 type slot. I think probably the Broncos, the Steelers, the Colts, and the Raiders, and I should say the Broncos. But yeah, those 4 teams are probably going to contend for that last spot. And
I agree with that. Now, I didn't mention them earlier, but you just mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would definitely say they're my hot take to make the playoffs. I think they might win that division. They have the second easiest schedule in the league coming up. Only the Ravens have the easier schedule. And I think honestly, I think the Ravens are a bit overrated. When you can contain Lamar, and now that teams have an extra year to prepare for him, I think he kind of got exposed in the playoffs. So I wouldn't be – I know he was league MVP, but I think – I don't know. I'm not – I think keeping him in the pocket, I think he'll struggle a little bit there. So I kind of like – and I like that Steelers front seven. I think that Steelers front seven has the ability to do that.
Is great.
I mean, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers this year will be the San Francisco 49ers of last year. That defense was good enough to win them 8 games alone last year. I could have been playing quarterback for them last year, and I could have won them more games alone. I mean, no offense to Mason Rudolph, but he was
he
was a total bum out there. And getting Big Ben back, even if Big Ben is just average, that's 100 times better than Mason Rudolph. So alone, and you have a healthy James Conner this year. James Conner was hurt.
If he stays healthy.
If he stays healthy, but assuming
he's
he's healthy, that's much better than what you got out of him last year. And I love that defense. I think that defense is top 3 in this league, and the young talent there is going to develop further and further. So I really like the Steelers as my sleeper team in the AFC. Them and the Broncos, I think, will at least get 2 of the wild card spots. And I think the Chargers get the 3rd, in my opinion.
Big Ben is a guy who could easily win that Comeback Player of the Year award.
He could even be an MVP conversation if he. I mean,
no one promised. I don't think the Steelers have enough weapons to do that. I just think.
No, but he's a guy that will throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. Now the picks are the reason he may not be in the MVP conversation. But if he only threw less than 10 picks, which normally he doesn't, he could be up there in the MVP conversation. I mean, before he got hurt last year, 2 seasons ago, he had a very productive season. Very productive.
Yeah. That's a good pick. I'm saying, all 4 of those teams could easily make a jump and be a surprise this NFL season. I think the Raiders my pick of the Raiders is a little bit of an outside pick. I think that the teams that we're looking at, I think the Broncos or the Steelers could be a huge surprise this season. Maybe the Colts. I mean, the Colts, the only problem is if you're trusting Phillip Rivers. They have a great defense, and they got one of the best offensive lines in football. But I just don't know if I trust Phillip Rivers. And based off last season,
it was painful to watch him.
I think they'll be better off playing the rookie. I think they'll be better off playing Herbert than playing Phillip Rivers. So,
wait, what?
Or, oh my God, I'm thinking about the Chargers.
You mean
scrap
Brissett.
That? Yeah, I think they'd be better off playing Brissett. I'm thinking about the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I like the Chargers
Brissett.
Though. I think the Chargers are a good team.
I do like the Chargers. Yeah,
they have a good defense. I like teams that have good defenses. That's always a good first step. If you have a good defense, you can be a good team in this league.
Here's my argument for Phillip Rivers against, I guess I should say. People act like he was on the Chargers last year. They had one of the best offensive weapon sets you could really ask for. You got Ekeler and Gordon out of the backfield. You got Williams outside. You got Keenan Allen. You had Henry when he was healthy, and he still was terrible. So I don't know how you could have any respect for any respect in picking him and even picking the Colts when their best receiver is T.Y. Hilton, who's always hurt. And they got a great backfield. They got Jonathan Taylor in the draft to go along with Mack, which was a little bit of a suspicious pick, but they got a great 1-2 punch now. But that's about it, you know. And this is, you said I know I'm going a little off topic here, but we're talking about you brought up the Ravens. I think the Ravens are still winning that division. They got even better this offseason. They got Calais Campbell. I mean, even if Lamar takes a step down, they got Campbell. And they added that running back. What running back did they add to compound with Mark Ingram? They added Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins was the guy they added
in the draft.
And, oh, man, he was good. I mean, you put him with Ingram, that's one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL. So I think even if Lamar falls off a bit, they're still a 12-plus win team.
I wouldn't be surprised if Lamar gets hurt. Not even – there's a Madden curse out there. I mean, that's just one thing.
Didn't work with Mahomes, though.
Hey, he got hurt. He dislocated. Lamar is on the cover, right? Did they announce that, or did they not announce that
yet? He's going to be on the cover this year.
That's what I thought. So I think there'll be a little Madden curse there. I see Lamar reminds me a lot of RG3's one really good year that he had, and I think one unfortunate play to Lamar could end his career. He's got that small frame about him. He's a very skinny guy. He's not that big. Like, the nice thing about Mike Vick was he was built. He was short, but he was built. He had that muscle. Lamar doesn't have that. Lamar's he's very twiggish when you look at him.
Mike Vick played a lot of years, though.
He did, but he was actually built. He had a lot of muscle on him he was shorter, but he had a lot of muscle on him there. Lamar's frame kind of scares me.
Mike Vick was a pretty good thrower, and I think Lamar Jackson is a pretty good thrower. So I think
he's a good thrower on the run, but not in the pocket.
If Jackson gets hurt, yes, you're right. If he does get hurt, his game will have to change. He'll have to learn how to throw from the pocket. But you saw the jumps that he made from his first year to his second year. So I believe even if he gets hurt and his mobility goes down, he could learn because he's that hard of a worker to fix his pocket throwing game and still be a pretty good player in this league. I mean, if he loses his running ability, he's no longer the MVP because he was the best dual threat. He was the best offensive weapon in the NFL last year. You didn't know if he was going to throw it. You didn't know if he was going to run it. He was the only player I've seen in a long time since Mike Vick back when he was with the Eagles, who could go for 200-plus yards and 100-plus rushing yards. And even Mike Vick didn't do that much, and Lamar Jackson was doing that on like a weekly basis. So I think he's special, man. I think you're right. Yes, if he gets hurt, that'll fuck him up pretty bad. But I just think, and barring an injury, he's going to be great again this season. I don't think the Ravens take that much of a step back. He just needs to learn how to throw in the postseason. In the postseason, there's more pressure, and you got to get the ball out quicker. He's got to learn that.
And
Last year, he was trying to hang on.
That's not his game at all.
I'm saying, I think if he learns that, and he can, like I'm saying, we know he has some pocket throwing ability right now.
Yeah, did you watch the Pro Bowl competition? He got outbeat by wide receivers. Wide receivers were throwing better than him.
No one takes the Pro Bowl seriously. That's not an argument.
Well, yeah, huh? Those players take the competition very seriously. They're trying to win that. They take pride in that.
I'm with you on your argument about the playoffs, because in the playoffs he was widely inefficient until the Chargers the Titans pulled back the pressure. I keep bringing up the Chargers for some reason. The Titans pulled back the pressure late in the game, and Lamar was able to roll out and hit some big throws. Early in the game, they were really pressing hard to get the ball out quick, and he was missing. But I think if he can just fix that ability, and I'm sure he's working on that all offseason. We saw how much he worked last offseason to become the NFL MVP last year. So I think he's going to come back this year with a little bit more fire under his belly and come back, maybe learn to throw that. And I don't know what the Ravens will do this year. I think it's tough. You got the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are just really, really good. They're going to be hard to beat by anybody. But the Ravens should go further than they did last season. Further than they should at least get to the conference finals, conference championship.
We'll see. It's still
we shall see.
A lot of time.
Well, that's the end of our third episode. We'll be back in sometime soon. Hopefully, we got something good to talk about for the next episode. But that's all for today. Oops.